What's going on, guys? It's me, Zachary Steele, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this one, I'm going to go over players I think you should look to buy low and sell high on in trades this week. I'm ahead of week 5. Normally, I touch on quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end. But this week, there honestly weren't really any quarterbacks I could touch on that were buy lows or sell highs. It's one of those positions that's really hard for there to be much movement up and down. Obviously, I do think that Trey Lance is a guy that I'd be really looking to add this week. But outside of that, nobody's really moved much in the rankings, nor did any performances last week change much. And I'm not going to sit here and waste your guys' time by talking about guys just for the sake of doing it. So we'll just start with the running back position. With that, let's get started. So at running back, my 4 buy lows this week are DeAndre Swift, Damian Harris, Nick Chubb, and Darrell Henderson. DeAndre Swift had a bit of a down week this last week. Jamal Williams actually led the team in carries, but I'm really just not worried about that. It came in a week after Dan Campbell talked about how we were going to see a lot more of DeAndre Swift going forward, and I still believe that. DeAndre Swift's the best offensive player they have. He's still got all of the receiving work, not all of the receiving work, but the lion's share of it. And the Lions are a team that are going to be trailing in a lot of games. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for dump downs to DeAndre Swift. So I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to see near the top of the league in receptions at the running back position. And he's just got a really safe floor with the receiving value he gives you. And then he's got immense upside in a game he breaks out. You could probably get him for a mid-end RB2 price tag, and I do view him as a mid to low-end wide receiver 1 or running back 1 the rest of the season. So go get DeAndre Swift. An example of a trade I made this week is I traded Nick Chubb for DeAndre Swift and Julio Jones. I personally view Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift as about equals the rest of the season, so I was really happy with that trade. But that's just sort of the context that I'd be looking to give you guys there. Another buy below for me would be Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. I personally believe you could be able to get him for a near free right now. A lot of people are talking about him as a drop candidate, but I personally actually felt that this last week was really promising for him. We knew it was going to be a rough week for him from a fantasy standpoint because they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and nobody runs on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But what you saw was Damian Harris actually run a lot of routes and he got 2 receptions. And you saw JJ Taylor come in and get some opportunities to steal some of the James White role, and he fumbled. So it's pretty much going to be Damian Harris and Brandon Bolden going forward. And I just don't think Brandon Bolden's going to get as much receiving work as James White got. So I think you're actually going to see an uptick in the usage in the receiving game for Damian Harris. That's really all he's ever been missing. He was definitely a guy that could get you 100 rushing yards, and you're hoping he falls in the end zone. But just a couple extra targets a game, I think, really bump up Damian Harris to that low end running back 2 role the rest of the season. And with as thin as the running back position is in fantasy, you can never have too many running backs. And Damian Harris is certainly a guy that's worth starting on occasion. So I'd be looking to get him because he's going to be near free. Another guy I'd be looking to buy low is Nick Chubb. I talked about how I personally traded him in my home league for Swift and Julio, but I still think Chubb's got better days ahead of him. He's had back-to-back pretty disappointing weeks just because he's failed to get into the end zone, and he's a guy that he's never really going to offer you a ton in the receiving game, so it's hard for him to have big weeks without touchdowns. But you saw Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's had a rushing touchdown each of the last 2 weeks. There's no reason that couldn't have been Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's still leading the team in snaps and carries. Nick Chubb's the clear number 1 in this offense. It just hasn't worked out in the last 2 weeks. Much better days are ahead for Nick Chubb. He's still a top 10 running back in fantasy, and I would be really ecstatic to get him on my roster. And the last buy low for me here is Darrell Henderson. He's honestly looked legit. He's looked like a really high quality running back in the NFL, and he's getting the carries and he's getting the targets that you want to see out of a workhouse running back. And he's in a top 10 offense, probably top 5. Darrell Henderson honestly has RB1 upside the rest of the season, and I think he'll cost you about a low end RB2. He's missed a game. People are always going to be worried about his injury history and the fact that he's never really done it before. So I don't think a lot of people are really going to believe in him until a couple weeks from now. But Darrell Henderson's legit. He gets the Seahawks this week, who are absolutely awful at defending the run. They're pretty much awful at everything defensively, but Darrell Henderson's going to have a really great game this week, and going forward, he's going to be awesome. And this is probably the best week to get him if you want to get him on your roster. And then, as always, it's kind of hard to sell high on running backs just because it's really hard to trade running backs given how scarce the position is. But an obvious sell high for me is James Conner. He's fallen in the end zone 4 times over the last 2 weeks. He's not been very efficient with the carries he's been given. And in each of these last 2 games, the Cardinals have been sort of able to lean on the run game in games that they were obviously going to win. They got out big against the Rams last week, so they were able to sort of milk clock with Connor late. But I think James Conner is going to be a guy that you can play in your flex and hope he falls in the end zone. I think you're going to get a lot of 15 carry for 60-yard games out of him with maybe a catch. She's looking at about 7.5 fantasy points on a weekly basis unless he falls in the end zone. And I think that's pretty much what you're going to get most of the season. And that's just not something I really want to be comfortable playing. But you could probably get low end RB2 value for him. If you could trade him for a wide receiver 3, I'd probably do that because I'm much more comfortable starting wide receiver in my flex. And as long as you don't need the running back, I'd be happy to move him. And then another obvious sell high for me is Cordarrelle Patterson. He played, I want to say 23 snaps this last game and scored 3 touchdowns on those while only running 15 routes. Argument could be made that Cordarrelle Patterson is going to be more involved and get more snaps, and I would agree with that, but also the efficiency is going to come absolutely crashing down. He's currently at the RB2 or 3 in fantasy right now, and that is obviously not sustainable. If you can trade him for a proven asset, if you can go trade Cordarrelle Patterson for Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, any of these sort of underperforming proven commodities, just absolutely do it. You probably got Patterson on waivers. As a saying, you never went broke taking a profit. Trading Patterson for proven commodity is going to be taking that profit. And I don't think Patterson's getting enough workload for him to be consistently this good, especially in an offense that's sort of underwhelmed this year. So I'd be moving Patterson if I could. Wide receiver, number one buy low for me right now is actually Julio Jones. He's actually been pretty much underwhelming most of the season. He had a very mediocre week 1 and 3. He did perform well against the Seahawks in week 2, but everyone's performed well against the Seahawks. And then he missed week 4. But he's looked good when he's been out there. The numbers haven't necessarily shown it, but he looks like he's still got juice left in him. And I think that much better days are ahead for him and this whole passing offense as a whole in Tennessee. The next 3 games for the Titans are against the Jaguars, the Bills, and the Chiefs. Those are not defenses that scare you. The Bills are kind of a defense that scare you, but that's going to be a game where I expect the Titans to sort of get blown out. It's going to be enough garbage time where Julio's going to put up quality performances. So I think after these next 3 weeks, you're going to have a really hard time getting Julio on your roster. He's going to have a couple blow up games in there, especially with AJ Brown, who I would not be shocked at all if he misses even more time. Certainly sounds like his injury is more serious than what Julio was dealing with. So right now, he's the healthiest wide receiver of the 2 on that team, and he's shown enough juice to me that I believe he could be even the number 1, even if AJ Brown is healthy. I view Julio as a mid to low end wide receiver 2 the rest of the season, and I don't think he's going to cost you that. Another guy to be looking at is DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, Hopkins is always going to be very expensive, but he's not really quite lived up to the draft capital you paid for him yet. There's just too many mouths getting fed in Arizona, but I believe that when tougher matchups come up, you're going to see a higher target share and more concentration on getting Hopkins involved. He's also been dealing with some injuries, so it's just been hard for him to be a focal point right now. But we know what DeAndre Hopkins is. He's an elite wide receiver playing in an elite offense with an elite quarterback. Hopkins is going to be a lock-it-in top 10 wide receiver the rest of the season. And if you could trade a low-end or a high-end RB2 or high-end wide receiver 2 for him, trade a low end RB2 or a middle RB2 for Hopkins, I'd be all over it just because I think that you're going to get some awesome games out of Hopkins and it just hasn't happened yet. Another buy low for me is T. Higgins. Obviously, he's extremely talented. I personally still view him as the number 1 wide receiver in Cincinnati. He's just missed the last couple of weeks. Cincinnati is an offense that I expect to start passing the ball a little bit more with the minor injury we saw to Joe Mixon. I don't know if he'll play this week, but T. Higgins looks like he'll be back. This offense is actually moving the ball pretty well. I think he's the number 1 wide receiver there, and he's not going to cost you a whole lot. I'd also be looking to buy low on Tyler Lockett after his first 2 blow-up weeks. Had 2 sort of very mediocre weeks in the last 2 weeks, but he's been dealing with some injuries. He's been on injury report the last couple of weeks, but nothing that's kept him out too long. And this week they play the Rams on Thursday, and historically speaking, when the Seahawks play the Rams, it's more of a Lockett game than a Metcalf game. The Rams like to put Jalen Ramsey on Metcalf, so that really opens up Lockett to do most of the damage to the Seahawks. Lockett's a guy that you know what you're getting with Lockett. You're going to have a lot of boom games and a lot of bust games just by the nature of the Seahawks offense being pretty slow paced, not getting very many plays in the whole during the course of a game, and Lockett being the deep threat that he is. So you're going to have games where you get 3 points out of Lockett, but you're going to have a lot of other games where you get 30. I personally want players that can win me my matchup on their own. Lockett's one of those guys, and he's not going to cost you that much right now, so I'd be looking to get Lockett. In the last receiver I'd be looking to get is a guy I love, CeeDee Lamb. He looks great out there. He's been extremely efficient with the targets he's given. The Cowboys just have not needed to really use either of their two receivers the last couple of weeks. But I mean, if 2 weeks ago against the Eagles, if his 50-yard catch was 1 yard longer, we'd be talking about him a lot differently because he got a touchdown that week. But because he didn't get in there, he's had 2 straight weeks of less than 10 fantasy points. I'm not worried about it at all. CeeDee Lamb is a lock it in, high end wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1 the rest of the season. The Cowboys offense looks awesome. I know you could be a little bit worried about how much they're running the ball, but I don't think that's necessarily going to continue. The defense, I think, is a little bit of a mirage. They're going to get into some shootouts, and CeeDee Lamb's going to have some monster games, so get him while you can. Receivers I'd be looking to sell high on are Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, and Marquise Brown. Tyler Boyd, the main reason I'm looking to sell high on him is because T. Higgins is coming back. I do view Tyler Boyd as the number 3 wide receiver in that offense. It's just going to be hard for that offense to support 3 wide receivers. I think you can get a decent offer for Tyler Boyd, a starter the rest of the season, and Boyd to me is a mediocre flex option the rest of the season. Another guy I'd be looking to sell high on is Brandon Cooks. Obviously, he's been absolutely awesome to start the season, but the fact of the matter is his upside's just really limited with the offense that he's in. It's going to be really hard for him to have any blow-up games the rest of the season. And this week against the Patriots, I expect Bill Belichick to take him away and make somebody else beat them. Brandon Cooks is going to have a rough week this week, and then it's going to be a lot harder for you to move him. He's just stuck in a bad offense. I love the player. Maybe he gets traded at the trade deadline, but I don't really know what trade could happen that really boosts his value. I don't see his value getting any higher than it is right now. I believe he's a wide receiver 13 on a points per game basis right now. And I'd be very happy to move him for any sort of a mid to high end wide receiver 2, even any wide receiver 2. I don't view Cooks as a wide receiver 2 the rest of the season. That's basically what I'm getting at. And then the last sell high here is Marquise Brown. He's really been awesome lately, and I'm really happy for him. He's a really talented player, but again, he's performing as a top 15 wide receiver so far. I just think it's going to be really hard for him to keep that up, given that the Ravens want to be a run first team. There are other passing options that have not quite really emerged too much yet in Mark Andrews, and Rashad Bateman's going to be back this week. That's just sort of a big can of worms that I don't really want to be a part of. Maybe Marquise Brown keeps this up, but if you can trade him for the value that he's performing at right now, I'd be really happy to, because I think what you're seeing right now is Marquise's ceiling. And it's just going to be really hard for him to keep this up the rest of the season. And then at tight end, tight end's another one of those positions that's really hard to pretty much moving on. But 2 guys I would be looking to buy low on are TJ Hawkinson and Rob Gronkowski. Hawkinson's coming off 2 straight pretty mediocre weeks. He came out saying the defense is just scheming to stop him. I guess it's concerning teams can do that, but the fact of the matter is not every team's going to do that. Hawkinson's still the number 1 quote unquote wide receiver in this offense. And with this as the tight end position is, he's a top 5 option. I'd be really happy to have him. And then a bit deeper down is Rob Gronkowski. Gronk's going to miss this week and maybe one more with the rib injury he's got going on. But when he's healthy, he's shown right now that he's probably going to be a top 6 or 7 tight end. And it's really hard to have a good tight end. If the Gronk owner in your league's hurting, you probably don't have to offer much. Just throw him a low-end flex option. Gronk's not going to be valued too much, but if you can hold out and wait, if you're a 3-1 team that's got a hole at tight end, Gronk to fill that for you in the second half of the season, and he's not going to cost you that much. So I'd be looking to get him. And then the guy I'd be looking to sell high on is Dawson Knox. He just keeps falling in the end zone. Maybe it continues. Maybe he's just used Robert Tonyan, but if you can trade him as a top 5 option, if you can trade Knox for Gronk and something, I would do it. If you can trade Knox and a little bit for Hawkinson or Kittle, I would do it. Just see what you can get for Knox. Obviously, he's in a really great offense and he's shown he's talented, but it's just going to be hard for him to keep up the touchdown pace he's dealing at right now. So, like I said, it's hard to move tight ends just because in general everybody has theirs or they don't. It's just hard to trade them, but just see what you can do with Knox. So with that, that'll be it for this week's buy low and sell high video. 3 players I didn't talk about that you think should have been included, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Feel free to have a discussion with you. If you got any trade offers coming in towards you or any trade offers you're looking to send out and got questions, feel free to let me know. Happy to help you guys. I love trading. Fantasy football is all about making your team better throughout the whole course of the season. You're 4-0 right now. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win your league. You're 0-4 right now. You're not out of it. You're a couple of trades away from being relevant again. So you just got to keep working to make your team better as the season goes on. That's where the fun is for me. I love doing this stuff. I love waivers. I love trading. Pretty consistently lead every league I'm in transactions, but this is what I love. So With that, if you did like this video, please feel free to give me a like. Try to put a lot of time into these, make sure I give you guys good information. So if you could just give me a like, that'd be awesome. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get notifications. Have an outrageous goal of 500 subscribers by the end of the season. We're probably not going to hit it, but let's get to 100 first. Help me out. Subscribe if you watch to the end. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll link that in the description. With that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.